We're going to be focusing on the IP intercom, the N8000 system, and really it's designed to keep us and our buildings safe and secure. And so we want to focus on that. It's an ideal way of providing building security while also providing optimum coverage by communications. So we're going to look at a couple things. If you look at this, we see an outline of the products that are available. It is totally expandable and scalable. If you notice at the top right side, it says up to 3,070 stations. That includes both master stations and door stations or substations. And if you look down in the middle in the network, up to 192 components. Those are IP only components. They could comprise an IP door station, an IP master station, or one of our specialty boxes or an exchange on the system. And then if you notice down on the lower right side how many contact closures we can accommodate. It's basically twice the number of stations that we can have on the system. So scalable, designed to be used. Oftentimes we like to think of this as being like Lego. You have a number of different components that you can use. You may not use them all in a particular design, but yet they are there for you to use when you need a certain function in that design. And so we're going to be talking about some of the design, some of the applications, and the components that are used in those systems. We're going to be looking at the applications for a school, for example, factory, hospital, and parking. One of the things that you'll notice is that a lot of the same components are used, may be used in a different way, but yet they're used to accomplish the same thing, to keep security and safety in mind. And so taking a closer look at the school function, we can see an example of a layout with the office. And it might be different buildings in the school. It might be a campus location where you have different buildings. And they're all connected by a local area network. And each of these components can be connected directly to the local area network and can communicate back and forth. If you notice on the bottom, we're going to be dealing with this a little bit later, can also jump out to a mass notification system so that voice paging and emergency messaging can be sent to people on the residence. Let's take a look at the office of the school. It would encompass a master station. It could have one or more master stations depending on the need. Might be one for the principal in a public school situation, one maybe for the secretary in the office. And these can be used for paging into the classroom, but they're also used for receiving calls from the classroom. And on the screen on the master station, you can see there's a little window there that it can read out what station is calling. And that can be programmed to reveal the room number, or if you just want to use a master station number. In the school classroom, it can be either IP or it can be analog. If you notice on the bottom, the IP master station is designed to be rugged and can take a bit of abuse, which sometimes happens in the classroom, shouldn't, but it does. And then the analog system can encompass a substation switch, such as the one with the red and the white button, and that can answer calls and can place calls to the office. May also have an optional handset that can be used that can communicate, but normally it would have one of our wall speakers in a wall speaker box that would handle the communication for talkback from the classroom to the office, and could be used for public announcement as well over that system. So we have a variety of options even for the classroom. There's some special function units that are also employed in a school setup, if you notice, we have an N8000CO. That's a interface for telephone PBX system so that telephone calls can be received or placed by means of the master station. And then we have the AF box, the N8000AF. This has three functions or three modes. Can be used for auxiliary paging, can be used for recording conversations or what happens on the system, and can also be used for time scheduling and events. And then we have our multi-interface unit, or N8000MI, which has a number of different functions depending on how you want to use it. It can connect to two analog PBX telephone ports. It can also carry audio. Audio's in, audio's out for background music or for PA paging. Has control inputs and outputs, so dry input contact and 16 control outputs. So these can be used for things like door strikes, for triggering cameras to move to a certain location, for example. It can be used also to cascade PA amplifiers. So a number of different functions depending on what you need it for. We have our N8000DI. Think of that as a direct interface. Has 32 contact inputs and outputs for controls and displays. And it can be used for addressing, again, cameras, door controls, any number of things that you want to control by direct contact closure. Each of these special function units are rack mountable, as in our system control units, and they accommodate 1U rack space, and if we notice the DI is a full rack space wide, whereas the others are actually a half rack space. You can put 2 and 1U spacing. All of this system is set up by software. Now the software comes with the N8000 unit, is used to set up the system. First of all, you load on the computer, connect the computer, set up the system, do all your configuration, and then you pull the computer away and the system is set up. The software is also available for maintenance that could be loaded on a computer and kept connected, and for recording. One interesting thing and one important thing to keep in mind about our N8000 system is that the software is license-free and the system is license-free. Once you buy the system, you don't have to pay an annual license or a configuration license. And that's true with the entire N8000 system. With the exception of where we interface with an IP device and we use special software to interface with an IP, there might be a license because we're connecting to a licensed system. And that would be because it's an IP. Maybe a SIP system. The school system, control, exchange, we would use the N8000RS for our analog system, and this is direct wire. It's not an IP system. It does have an IP interface in that you can connect an IP master station directly into it, and it can serve as the system exchange. It can accommodate 16 connected RS stations. So there might be the RS stations we saw in the previous slide, or might be other types such as door stations. We also have a unit that goes on the back of the RS called an adapter, and it's a paging adapter. And it's basically a circuit board that can plug into the back of the N8000 RS exchange. It fits like this. Now, it can accommodate a number of different functions. If you notice, it has some switches, some 3-position switches mounted on the board itself. So if you look at the sample at the top right there, we see that the switch is to the extreme left side. Now, that means that that output is now configured to go directly to a 25-volt speaker and can be used for overhead paging or even classroom paging. If we put the switch directly over to the right side, then we have a balanced line output, which can go for an amplifier. So that particular channel then can go to an amplifier, which then can serve a number of speakers. Maybe the corridor on the second floor, or the corridor on the first floor, or maybe the speakers in the lunchroom. And so it can be used for doing PA announcements, etc. However, if you keep the switch in the middle, such as this example, then it's just direct pass-through and would connect up to an RS station or to a classroom. So versatility built into this system with a little bit of adaptation to be able to accommodate different configurations. Another example of a product we have that can fit into the school system and could fit in other areas as well for security and safety is our RS-480 VSET. It's a video intercom system that works with our RS exchange, and it has an integrated door station with a video camera. And it uses an interface unit, the IF-480 seen on the right side, and that RS-480V is able to show color pictures because it's a color camera, and it requires only one Cat5 cable from the door station back to this interface unit, and then the interface unit can split out the video to show on a monitor, and the audio then can go to our IP intercom system. But we still have expandability built into the system because using our AF box, remember that's our box that can interface audio, can be used to interface with our VM3240 voice alarm system, and it can form part of a mass notification system. So it can be used for addressing from 1 to 60 zones, and those can be built up according to your needs. So you can page into corridors, into different buildings in the campus, and it can provide the opportunity of triggering emergency messaging that can be pre-recorded so that a message can go out with an unemotional response so that people are in control and don't panic. So our VM3240 is another system, and usually we deal with that in our mass notification webinar, but we'll do that another time. Let's now look at our factory. Factory setup uses some of the same components. If we notice the administration office, you may have a number of N8000 master stations because a number of different people may want to address the factory. It might be the production manager, might be the plant manager, might be different personnel that have authority to make announcements. And so a number of master stations, and they can be set up so that someone on the floor or someone in a given area, such as the lab, for example, when they place a call, that call can go to that particular master station. And then the master station can be set up as well so that if that line is busy, it can be call forwarded. Or if there's no answer, it can be call forwarded. So this is all set up in software and configured in software. If we look at the number of different applications, the number of different master stations we have, and the way that we configure, we're going to take a little bit closer look at this. And if we look at the component overview, in this case we're using the N8000EX, and that's our exchange station interface. And it's addressable by IP. So if you notice the port on the right side of the back, it can accommodate 192 exchanges, as we said. So you could have 192 of these N8000EXs connected in a system. Probably never going to have a system that big, but each of them then can accommodate 16 stations, whether door stations or master stations. And they're connected with twisted or two-pair wiring. They can provide full duplex communication with the N8050DS substation. They have built-in echo cancellation on the master station, so you're able to communicate clearly and have very precise conversation. It has PA paging output, it has background music capability, and with the N8000AF you can record up to 2 of these exchanges, 2 master stations per exchange. We also have our N8000RS. Let's take a little bit closer look at this. We spoke about this in the school application, but it also has network connection. If you notice the port on the right side of the back. And it's connected by 2 conductor shielded wire. So if you're putting a school system in, make sure that you use 2 conductor shielded wire. Or if you're upgrading from a previous system using the RS, make sure that the wiring is 2 conductor shielded. Because it is backward compatible to some existing VS900 substations, so you want to make sure that the wiring is compatible as well. It can accommodate 16 substations per exchange, much the same as the N8000EX. It has no background music. The N8000EX does, and it can accommodate that adapter to be able to convert each of these outputs into a speaker line or a balance line. The communication on this is half duplex, and it has 2 external speech paths or links. Each of these systems are connected together and interfaced, and oftentimes what you'll do with the door stations and the master stations, you'll connect them together with a PoE switch. So a network switch with power over Ethernet, and these can be expandable. You can get a variety of sizes of output ports on these, and we do not sell these and we do not manufacture them. They're available from other companies, and you can add, as I said, 192 components, IP components, interfacing them with the network switches. No exchange needed, so you don't need an exchange if you're using just IP. And there's no server needed, so you don't need a separate computer dedicated as a server to control the system. The entire control and application is built into the system. Some of the features important for factories is the rugged aspect of the N8000 components. You notice that they're very industrial looking sometimes, such as our master station on the right, and that's specifically designed for rugged environments. The door stations, for example, are Vandal resistant quite often, and quite a few of them are also weather resistant. So ruggedized, Vandal resistant components to be able to suit the needs of a harsh environment. In the factory, you may also want to use some of our special function units. The N8000 can interface to the PBX system, again for using a regular telephone system and being able to make call-outs or call-ins. The N8000AF, again, has the 3 modes. Oftentimes, they like to use this for shift changes, for break scheduling, lunch scheduling, etc. So your time scheduling can be done by means of an N8000AF. Again, the multi-interface unit can be used for a variety of reasons. And then, probably in factories and industrial applications, the N8000DI comes into its own because it can interface a number of different things. Remember, it's 32 contact inputs and 32 contact outputs, so you can use it for controls and displays. You might have a pilot panel, as is shown in the illustration on the bottom. That could be a series of lights such as this to indicate what door stations or what master stations are being used. Or a lot of times people will do a customized map of their plant so that when a door station or when a master station is triggered, it shows up on that map as being active. The direct interface can also be used to connect to a PTZ camera so that you have presets and maybe someone's at the door and you're using the PTZ camera for a variety of reasons to look at different things. but when they push the button on the door station, it can trigger a signal to send it to turn the camera to look at who's at the door. That could also be true of a regular box camera as well. Sometimes you need to trigger strobes to identify certain situations, and the N8000DI can interface with the strobe to accomplish that as well. Remember, we're dealing with life safety and we're dealing with security, so we want to make sure that the system is designed for the application that it needs to be designed for. We can also use our BM3240 system for factory-wide coverage. We can interface this to paging horns for outside of the factory or even inside on the factory floor to make sure that we get the SPL above the ambient noise so that everyone hears the message clearly. For offices and other common areas, we use our well-known PC580 speaker, ceiling speaker. Again, the interface is done with the AF8000AF, and this they can interface and communicate with our factory-wide coverage using the N8000 system. Hospitals, too, have unique challenges or opportunities. Hospitals are places where life safety is very critical and security is very critical. And so the N8000 suits this application well. We have different areas such as operating rooms, labs, general areas in the hospital, corridors, etc., that we need to address. And so looking at the exits and entrances to the outside and access to the hospital, sometimes they want to control the security there, and maybe it's not the situation where everyone has a card to swipe a card reader, but you need to be able to interview people or to speak to them and find out what they're all about before you open the door to let them in. So the door station, the QN8640DS, which is a weatherized door station, it comes equipped with a weather boot so that the button doesn't freeze. It's full duplex substation, and it has relay output so that you can hit a door strike and open the door for them if they confirm that they are who they are, etc. Has 4 open collector outputs for strobes, etc. And it also has an LED which indicates that the call has been placed. So you get a visual confirmation that yes, I did push the button, I'm waiting for someone in the master station to answer. It's stainless steel for outdoor application, and in the indoors we've got an ABS face on it, a little bit more appealing for the decor inside sometimes, where you don't want it to look too industrial. It fits in a 3-gang electrical box mount, or we can provide the boxes. These are operated by PoE, or if you are beyond the range of power over Ethernet, then you can add a power adapter to be able to power these. Has contact input for remote call activation, so you could have a separate switch to be able to trigger the call. Master stations for hospital applications can be varied depending on the needs. If you're speaking to people, maybe you want to use one with a gooseneck microphone that they're right in front of you, but you have a division because of security and want to isolate maybe people who may be contagious, so you can talk to them and use the microphone and be hands-free. Or you might want to use one of the desktop microphone, or the desktop master stations, or even a wall-mounted master station in different applications. One of the unique ones is our N8033 master station. It's a flush mount, hands-free master station. This is designed ideally for things like labs and operating rooms where you need to contact maybe radiology or some other department. And it can be triggered with a foot switch. Now, we don't provide the foot switches. A regular foot switch that can trigger things is applicable because it has a contact closure to be able to do dialing out to a master station. It also has a bracket that can be used for wall mounting or for desk mounting. The switch in it, or switches, are membrane switches, and they're protected by polyester film. Has an IP rating of 65, which means it can be wiped down, and it's chemical resistant. And you need that for operating rooms and labs where you're dealing with oftentimes contagions that might need to be disinfected on a regular basis. So again, it's dealing with safety and security. Hospitals, like other areas too, need the expandability to be able to address different areas of the hospital. Similar to schools, we can use the N8000AF, and that can interface with our VM3240 voice alarm system. And it can form part of that mass notification system to be expandable to reach different areas of the hospital and different applications or different situations where you need to send emergency message or just general PA messaging over the speakers. Further to the PA side of it, we do have special applications for operating rooms or even labs where we have a clean room speaker, the PC5CL, which is applicable for hospitals. For the general corridors and general areas of a hospital, though, the PC580RU works well, looks good, sounds good, and is very functional. So again, we're expanding the system to cover not just the doors, but the general areas of the hospital and some of the unique situations hospitals have. The central computer, or central equipment rather, is, if we mentioned before, use a computer to set the system up, no server required. It just operates. Pull the computer away after it's set up, and it just continues to function. Now, one of the things our tech department likes to emphasize is do not sweat the setup. Don't worry about it, because our tech department is available to assist you for setting up the components of the system by means of the software. They have lots of experience at it. Maybe you're only doing it once or twice a year. They do it every day. And they have the experience of being able to set it up in a very fast way that can help you. So they can go online with you and can even set it up in your laptop, or we can set it up here and send you by email the file to be able to load for setup. Again, there's no server needed, so you don't need a dedicated computer to operate the system. In hospitals, like others, we would use the N8000EX, and that provides us expandability up to 3,000 and more stations. And that's because we can do it, as I said before, 16 stations per exchange. And these exchanges can all live on a network switch. There's built-in echo cancellation and PA paging and also recording, because at the end of the day, someone is going to ask the questions. What was said? When was it said? When was the response given? And so it's good to be able to record everything that happens on the system. Probably the other end of the spectrum in our minds would be parking, but yet parking too has unique requirements for safety and security. Because parking is an area where sometimes it's very cold and dark. And paging or communication from the parking back to a security office needs to be clear and concise. And so our N8000 is able to do that. And so back to the security office, and then even jump out to a security company. What do we use? Well, if you've been in the underground parking lots in a lot of the big buildings downtown, you'll notice that quite often they'll have an emergency assist station. And basically this is a custom designed panel. We don't do the custom design, it's done by others. But basically we provide the insides, and that's our N9640SB IP station board. So it comes without the stainless steel faceplate. It comes as, I guess you could call it a kit. So it's all of the components needed to make a substation, but without the faceplate. So it has the back box, has the microphone, has the speaker, has the interface, and this, similar to the N9640, it has outputs and also inputs. So you can have a separate input for calling, and that mushroom switch on the assist panel can be used and can interface into the board so that when an emergency call is being made, by pushing that mushroom switch, you are making an emergency call back to the security department. Some have set these up so that if it's an active security department, you could even have a switch that is key controls that you actually physically have to come out to the emergency assist station to reset it. Because until it's reset, the output can control a strobe, whether it's a red strobe or a blue strobe, depending on what the application is. It has an output too to an external speaker, so if you need to interface to a speaker for clarity overhead, then that can be done. So operates similar to a substation with some added features and some adaptability. And might want to mention here too that in addition to emergency assist stations, this is also ideal for interfacing into elevator cabs. Another area sometimes we have a challenge with is when you leave the parking area and you come to the exit and for whatever reason your card doesn't work, your little stub that you have paid your parking at the lobby doesn't work, and you need to talk to someone, and it's just the wigwag there. So a master station at this location, or rather a substation, this location can be used to interface with the security department, and they can listen to your plea for help, and they can decide to open the wigwag for you and set you free. As we mentioned before, if, for example, it interfaces to a security department, if the security department is dealing with another call on the network, then it can be set up to call forward to another master station, or it can call forward to telephone if we have the N8000CO interface in the system. Again, the N8000AF can be used for recording responses and conversations that take place on the system. So component overview, the N8000RS can be used to interface, and that can address up to 16 substations. And looking at some of the applications here, just of all the components that we've discussed in all of these applications, you can see that they're all available. As I mentioned before, it's sort of like a Lego system where you have different components. How you put them together creates the design. Now, if you're having a challenge in figuring out which components to put together for which particular design, that's what our tech department is for. We are available to be able to provide assistance and consultation so that if you need to do a particular function, then talk to us by all means. And Bill, Derek, or Danny will be able to walk you through what you need to do, which components you need to select, whether it's totally IP or whether it's two-core shielded type or whether it's four-wire type. And they all have their unique applications, and